Imagine a stage set for grandeur, millions spent, yet the crowd is nowhere to be found. A retired U.S. general steps forward, not to salute a leader, but to declare Mexico a global force, shaking the foundations of power with words that cut deeper than any weapon. This is the story of a spectacle that backfired and a truth that refused to stay silent. The scene was primed for glory. $50 million in staging, polished tanks gleaming, flags waving proudly, and orchestras ready to roar. It was billed as a historic, patriotic tribute. But what unfolded was far from the script. Empty bleachers, an awkward hush, and a relentless drizzle mocked at the pomp. What was meant to be a show of strength became a hollow echo. The planned celebration of national pride turned into a stark portrait of disconnection. The president envisioned a parade to assert dominance, a visual rebuttal to critics, but reality delivered a humbling blow. No cheers rang out. No crowds gathered on an overblown stage before an invisible audience. The parade didn't falter. Due to logistics, it lacked heart. No tank, however grand, could mask a nation's silence. As military vehicles rumbled down the streets, the people stayed quiet in their homes. Helicopters buzzed overhead, but the faces meant to gaze upward were absent. In that silence, the truth was undeniable. This wasn't a tribute but a one-man show, a desperate bid to revive a fading image of greatness. Questions erupted online, in debates, and in private talks. Hook, what was this event truly honoring? The troops, the Constitution, or a leader craving constant applause? The contrast was glaring. Beyond the barricades, streets lay deserted. Inside, organizers feigned normalcy, cameras dodged empty angles, and commentators rambled to fill the void with anything but the truth. Yet the truth seeped through every crack. Nobody showed up. Those who did seemed lost. Official reports claimed record crowds and fiery patriotism. But the images told a different story. Metal bleachers glistening under rain. Not spotlights, abandoned in solitude. Each passing tank echoed a force detached from civilian reality. Every speech rang emptier. Against a silent populace, then came the turning point. Comparisons emerged. Authoritarian leaders, past and present, using military parades to bolster their image. The pattern was unmistakable. This wasn't a symbol of unity but of control. Not collective pride, but a personal narrative demanding obedience. Social media ignited. Was this a tribute to the troops or a disguised presidential ego trip? Signs in other cities spelled it out. If Melania doesn't have to live with him, why should we? Satire blended with frustration. And the message was clear: the nation wouldn't cheer blindly. While tanks rolled through the echo, the real parade was elsewhere, quiet, conviction-driven, without fanfare but full of purpose. Hook, as the broadcast droned on, a voice shattered the script. A journalist, not a politician, but a general, Mark M.J., former Joint Chiefs Chair, rose not as a military figure but as the backbone of an institution that refused to stay mute. His words were sharp, deliberate, and seismic. We don't swear loyalty to a person. The statement hit like thunder, drawing a line between personal power and constitutional duty. It wasn't mere dissent, it was a military warning. MJ spoke not to please, but to remind: a uniform isn't servitude, and a general's star shines for a republic, not a man. While the presidential stage scrambled to keep the show alive, the general fired truths like bullets. We don't pledge allegiance to a king, a dictator, or a would-be dictator. No one clapped. This wasn't a speech for applause. It was a disciplined rebuke to authoritarianism. Cameras didn't know where to focus. The tension was electric. For the first time in years, someone named the unspoken. America was inching toward a cult of personality. The parade's martial music, patriotic banners, and tanks felt too familiar, echoing regimes that demanded personal loyalty over institutional integrity. The military's response wasn't with weapons but with words, Constitution in hand. Social media exploded. Analysts, veterans, and citizens shared MJ's clip. His calm resolve carried the weight of a shout, resonating from the Pentagon to every corner of the nation. We serve the Constitution, not a tribe, a faith, or a figurehead. With that, the divide became a chasm. The president didn't respond. Immediately, cameras clung to tanks and salutes, trying to hold the narrative. But the story had shifted. The general, without naming names, made clear who the armed forces don't serve. Allies downplayed it as a vague institutional statement, but the specificity was undeniable. The parade, the spectacle, it all had a name. MJ's silence on that name let the nation fill in the blank. In Powers halls, his words were a quiet rebellion. In barracks, an act of honor. In homes, a reminder that limits still exist. His voice didn't fade with the microphone. It echoed where power tries to bend democracy. For once, the nation recalled what it had nearly forgotten, even in silent barracks. Voices will defend the Constitution with more strength than any podium speech. Hook, from the parade's first notes, something was off. It wasn't just the empty seats or persistent rain, it was the jarring attempt to turn a personal milestone into a national event. A political birthday masked as a military tribute, but no amount of rhetoric or millions spent could hide the self-worship before an absent crowd. Late-night hosts didn't hold back. Jimmy Kimmel dubbed it fartygrass, a parody of military pomp laced with narcissistic delusion. Cameras avoided the stark truth. Rows of empty chairs, cleared streets, an atmosphere more rehearsal than rally. The failure was undeniable. The tank's roar couldn't drown out the people's silence. Fireworks burst over a sky without witnesses. While millions funded the spectacle, the only thing marching was one man's ego, chasing crowds that never came. Across the nation, the contrast roared. While the president celebrated himself, cities like New York, Los Angeles, San Diego, and Philadelphia filled with outraged citizens. These weren't paid actors, as some claimed, but real, massive, spontaneous crowds shouting, "This isn't a monarchy." Signs multiplied, from "If Melania doesn't have to live with him, why us?" to images of a petulant leader playing with tanks. The nation became a living satire of its own democracy. Commentators shifted from the parade to its symbolism not of strength, but of a leader's isolation. The decorated stage, surrounded by emptiness, broadcast a celebration without guests, a military march without purpose. Generals participated, dutifully, but their grim faces spoke volumes. This wasn't a tribute to soldiers, it was a vanity parade in patriotic disguise. Patriotism isn't forced, it's earned. The event meant to cement a strongman image only eroded it. Memes flooded. Online, satire shows thrived, but beneath the humor, a shift was clear. This wasn't just another parade, it was a breaking point, a deafening absence. Hook as millions marched nationwide, demanding respect for the Constitution and rejecting personality cults. A graver alarm sounded. It came not from pundits or politicians but from the heart of the military. General MJ's words shook the republic. "We don't swear loyalty to a tyrant, we swear it to the Constitution." The threat, he said, isn't across borders or in distant caves, it's here, dressed in a suit, staging parades for itself, rewriting history to suit its whims. MJ, with 43 years of service, didn't speak lightly. His words were rooted in duty, experience, and a deep understanding of leadership in crisis. He didn't name the president, but the target was clear, a leader obsessed with personal power, blind adulation, and erasing opposition. This wasn't opinion, it was principle. The military's loyalty lies with the law, the people, and the founding ideals of liberty and checks on power. The timing was stark. As the president staged a creaking parade to project control, reality exposed his weakness. Citizens protested, and the military sent a message. We march for principle, not a person. Global analysts warned of institutional fracture. Even conservative outlets had to cover MJ's words. Polls showed fading trust in the president's leadership. What was meant as a unifying ceremony became a symbolic battlefield. Propaganda and ego versus constitution and country. The real danger to democracy isn't external, it's the internal acceptance of a lie. The narrative that a nation revolves around one man, not its institutions. MJ, in uniform, crushed that lie before it could take root. The failed parade didn't just sound alarms, it revealed a nation in resistance, led by those sworn to protect the republic, not its figurehead. No fireworks or fanfare could hide the truth hanging in the air like that day's drizzle. The Constitution bows to no one. While the president chased a symbolic coronation, the real march was resistance not armed, but rooted in principle. Aerial shots showed empty bleachers. On the ground, tanks groaned from wear, not glory. In nearby streets, protests pulsed like a nation's heartbeat. The president, standing before a hollow spectacle, seemed blind to the end of blind obedience. Monarchs belong in history books. Here, power rests with the people, and the Constitution is the only crown. The defining moment wasn't the president or the measured steps of generals, it was the silence. Silence from empty stands, from soldiers who didn't cheer, from a nation watching with skepticism. This wasn't celebration, it was warning. It wasn't about honoring the fallen, but feeding one man's ego. In America, that's called danger. Protest signs spoke truth. No kings, no subjects. We paid for your parade, but we won't clap. Loyalty is earned through values, not tanks. Amid the media noise, one thing stood out. A citizenry awake, done with spectacles, ready to defend democracy as a living duty, not a relic. The military's oath to an idea, not a man, drew the perfect line. A shield against delusions of grandeur, a wall against imperial dreams. In America, we march for all, fight for the right to dissent, and, if needed, die for a constitution written for millions, not one. Hook. The parade ended as it began, cold, wet, with cameras chasing crowds that never came. But something did march that day: rejection, collective will, the republic itself, cutting through the empty pomp to remind us all, no uniform bows to whim, no leader stands above the pact that binds us. As the last tanks rolled away and the lights dimmed, one truth endured. The Constitution shines without fireworks. It glows in its promise of a free nation, and no empty spectacle can ever dim that vow. Thank you to the voices that spoke up, to the citizens who marched, and to the soldiers who stood for principle over power. Your strength keeps the republic alive. If you're proud to stand for truth and dignity, join the movement. Raise your voice, because our collective power matters.